Pakistan, moderated by Professor Dr. Herlina. Professor Dr. Herlina, the audience is yours.
Thank you very much for these times. The next session or in this keynote speaker, it is Professor Fauzia Samin, and they will discuss about the language education, sustainable development goals, and social justice for the English as a medium instruction. Hello, Prof. Zamin. I am Herlina from State University of Jakarta. And then in this session, we all discuss about your paper. I think it is a very interesting paper because maybe it is just me like teaching about the English in other second language in students of elementary school and student for the high school in the university. I'd like to say thank you very much for Dr. Tamin to become a keynote speaker in this conference in Indonesia or State University of Jakarta. So I want to give you the time to discuss about this very good paper for the participant in this conference. Please, for Tamin, it is time for you.
Thank you, Dr. Helena, for your very kind words. And Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to everyone. It's such a pleasure for me to be able to join in your conference today and to make whatever contribution I can. I'd like to thank the senior administration of UNJ for their very kind invitation to me. And of course, for all the conference, the team who supported and helped and held the simulation session and so on. Thank you very much, Dr. Motia Delina in particular, for your constant communication to make everything so smooth for today. I will, if you allow me, I'm going to share my screen and then begin my presentation. So if you just give me a minute. Okay, so here is my screen and I'm going to make it full screen. The topic for my talk today is language education, sustainable development goals, and social justice, and role of EMI. So that is what I'll be looking at today. If I move on, I'd like to share with you briefly the outline. The plan is that I'll probably talk for about 30 minutes so that I can leave some time for questions later on. I'll sort of go through a very brief introduction about, we are all familiar with the hegemony of English as lingua franca, and I'll spend more time on looking at the case of Pakistan from the theoretical lens of the intended, enacted, and experienced curriculum model. I have adapted it to look more closely at the policy and practices in terms of language education in EMI in Pakistan. I'll move on to talk a little bit about EMI and sustainable development goals, and then go back into this broad area of language education and social justice. Realities and Dreams. Realities and Dreams is the title of a book by my guru, Professor Havel Coleman. And I had the opportunity to actually write a piece for that on the English and development in Pakistan. So moving on then, getting straight into the brief introduction. We all know about the dominance of English as a lingua franca, and we also know the reasons, so I'm not going to go into them in any detail. We know that globalization and what I call digitization, which is, and in the last 2 years, particularly moving everything into this virtual space, and therefore language of communication has become extremely important. And as Abrarul Hassan 2021 recently said, English is the language, is used as lingua franca because it is seen as, particularly now because we are all academics here, in academia as a language of mobility and mobility of both knowledge. So when you do some research and you want to publish it and you want others to know about it, you would use English as the language which is the widest read and where you have the, the vast majority of publications. And of course, in terms of people, so in terms of things like, even if now we don't physically move, the fact that I can present at this conference and we can all be together at this conference is because we all share English as a lingua franca. I will be using this theoretical model, which is the basically a model for, and a very well-known model for curriculum, the intended, enacted, and experienced curriculum. I've adapted it to look at language education, and in terms of language education policy, and particularly the nexus of policy and practice. So we're talking about the nexus of policy and practice and its resultant outcomes, learner outcomes. So that is the framework that I will be using to look at the case of Pakistan. I would like to zoom in now to Pakistan, and I want to use this as one of the representative examples for many countries, I think, and the people who are in the audience today. And I hope your experiences will resonate with what I'm saying, because I think we share a lot in common, particularly if we are an ex-British colony. And all of us, I think, are present here, majority would be multilingual countries. So there's no one language. We're not monolingual countries. So I think that's a common point at which we meet. And the issues that we face, I think, having read the literature, seem to be very similar. But if you have any specific questions, please note them down, and I'll be very happy to answer them at the end. So as I said, I'll zoom into language education and EMI and present the case of Pakistan to you. Before I go into reviewing the policies and the practices, I'd like to quickly look at position and status of English in Pakistan. As I said earlier, it's a multilingual country with more than 70 languages. I'm not going to go back to the time when Pakistan was made in 1947, but I'll only go back 49 years to 1973, when the Constitution of Pakistan presented the position of languages very clearly: Urdu as the national language, English as the official language, and then it also acknowledged that the regional languages needed to be developed. One thing that was clearly said was that English will be replaced by Urdu in 15 years. 49 years on, unsurprisingly, English is still the official language. It's the language, particularly of all government documentation, the writing that goes on in courts and offices and the parliament, even if there's bilingual use in the oral, debates in the parliament and so on, everything that's written is still in English. So this is still a very important official language, and one needs to have proficiency in it if you really need to move forward. In terms of what people think about English, of course, they get a cue from what the official policy is. This was an article which Mehboob did in 2004, which was titled "No English, No Future." And I think it sums up very well the attitudes of the parents and the learners in Pakistan, who think that if you do not have proficiency in English, actually your life chances are very limited. And there's no possibility of upward social mobility. You cannot have opportunities across borders because now there's so much mobility across borders. And when I say mobility, it's not necessarily physical mobility, but also in terms of communication across borders. And therefore, you need English as the language of communication. In 2022, which is the present now, English is still considered, and in fact, it has strengthened its role as the language of power, economic opportunities, and higher social status. And as I said, I think that many of you will be able to resonate with this experience or what I'm saying in terms of Pakistan. It has a gatekeeping function. For example, entrance test, access to higher education. The entrance test has an English component, and you need to pass that. There's the test for what we call the Pakistan Civil Superior Services, which is the bureaucracy. In order to get there, you need to pass the English test. And therefore, it is actually opening and closing doors to future life chances. And that is from where it gets its power. The position and status of English in Pakistan is important to look at because I think it's closely linked to EMI. The reason why English as medium of instruction is in demand is because of some common beliefs and perceptions, or what you might call misperceptions. Because there's lots of research done on this now. But anyway, the common perceptions are that EMI leads to quality in education. How, why, what happens has not been studied a lot, but whatever has gets you to question this assumption. EMI, and the next one is EMI will develop English as medium of instruction. If you use that, it will develop learners' English language skills. Hence, everyone demands English and they want to learn English, and almost it has become synonymous with English as medium of instruction because that's the route people think, and that's the way in which English language can be learned and in which you can ensure quality of education. And I'll show you in a little while that these are myths and they are misperceptions, really. I'd also like to share a snapshot of the education system in Pakistan, just one slide, to let you see how it is based. We've got three streams of education. There's the public or the state-funded institutions, then there are the private institutions, and then there are madrasas or the religious schools. For the time being, we'll only focus on public and the private institutions because madrasas are really not part of the mainstream education system. Though the efforts are being made to bring them into the mainstream, but they're still not there. So basically, we'll be focusing on the public or the state-funded institutions and the private institutions. And interestingly, it's not just the three streams of education. The system of education in Pakistan, and I want to give you this background because whatever we're going to say about policy and their practices later on, that will need to be considered with this background in mind. So where are these policies being implemented and what kind of an environment is there? So first there are the three systems, but then there's further social stratification of schools within each system. So in the private system, you would have high income schools, and then there would be, and these are called the elite schools. And then in the state-funded schools also, there are few elite schools, mainly cadet colleges and schools run by the military and the armed forces. So there are elite schools, and there's that very few, but then they're there, and access to them depends upon your knowledge of English. Middle-income private schools is the next kind, and these schools call themselves English medium schools. What happens actually in the classrooms, once again, we'll go and see how the policies are enacted there. And then the masses. For the masses, we have got low-income private schools or the government-funded schools, or what are called government schools, which are the state schools. So those are the ones for the majority of the population. And so you need to think about how these are socially, and in terms of class distinction, And in terms of income of the parents and the home background of the students, there's the social stratification of schools in Pakistan. Coming back to the framework, so we'll be looking at language education and, as I said, nexus of policy and practice and learner outcomes. So the intended policy, the enacted policy, and the experienced policy in terms of what we call the achieved learner outcomes as a result of this policy and practice. So if we look at them one by one, the intended policy, and I will be, as I said earlier on, moving back and forth between language education and EMI. EMI is specifically located within this big holistic understanding of language education, language in education. And I will not take you through all these policies one by one, but I do want to identify a couple of policies here. 1980, a policy came about that all schools will use Urdu as medium of instruction. And that was for whatever different reasons. I mean, it's not within the scope of this presentation to talk about the reasons. Then in 2000, so I've just selected a couple to show you what kind of confusions exist and the kind of policy changes that have happened in the last 40, 50 years. In 2009, we had an education policy which said that math and science will be taught through the medium of English from grade 6 onwards. But surprisingly, at the same time, there was what was called the EMI, the English as Medium of Instruction experiment, which was funded by DFID and British Council in Punjab, which is one of the biggest provinces of Pakistan. And this was done without any planning, without any thinking, without any preparation. And of course, then in 2013, a report came questioning the English as medium of instruction as a viable option for education in Punjab. 2019, policy was reversed, actually officially reversed and reverted back to using the 2009 policy guidelines. And then we recently got a single national curriculum, but the policy questions, the language instruction questions are still, there's a lot of ambivalence there and there's no clarity. So two things are clear when we look at the intended policy. Evidence of confusion. There's no clarity about, and most of these policies are driven by, not by thinking about the quality of instruction, but more politically driven by ideologies of different kinds, like one nation, single national curriculum says one nation, one curriculum. So unity of the nation and so on. So the drivers of these policies are not educational quality or achieving educational quality, but mainly political and ideological reasons for this. But one other important thing to note is that there's almost no value, limited or no value given to learners' indigenous languages, despite the fact that in Pakistan now all provinces are independent and they can actually go ahead and work on developing their own local indigenous languages. And this has been there for quite a few years now, from 2010. The 18th Amendment to the Constitution gave education to the provinces. So once again, to remind you about the different kinds of schools, and when we talk about enacted policy at institutional level, the policy is enacted according to school type. So if you just look at the three school types again, the elite schools, the middle income schools, and the low income schools, or the free education government schools, where the education is free. How is the policy enacted at the institutional level in these schools? And then we move on to look at the classroom level. At the institutional level, it's according to school type. So the elite and private public schools have continued to use EMI no matter what the policy. So they seem to be, they belong to the powerful elite, and they really do not care about, or are not somehow, though it's not said anywhere in the documents, they don't come under the sort of the ambit of this policy that issued by the government. The middle income schools, as I said, market themselves as English medium schools, but then there's a lot of ambivalence. Some of them, sometimes, if they want state funding or they want approval from the state, They try and take that policy for a while. So there are a lot of differences between, but they all call themselves English medium schools because that's how they get the student recruitment based on calling themselves English medium schools. Then we've got the public and low private schools, which are really for the masses. And these use Urdu or the local languages as their as medium of instruction mainly. And of course, with all those umpteen unplanned language policy changes that sometimes come in, sometimes they reach the classrooms, sometimes they don't, fizzle out at different levels, because we all know that the policies, unless implementation plans are in place, are problematic in implementation. In higher education, all private and public sector higher education institutions use English as medium of instruction. So English becomes a means to access higher education in Pakistan. You need proficiency in English to access higher education. At the classroom level, the studies that have been done, not just in Pakistan, but in similar contexts, for example, in Nepal, show very clearly that the teaching goes on in L1, or there's frequent code switching, code mixing, what has now recently been called translanguaging, but it's unplanned, it's spontaneous, it's not, so it does not have any pedagogic value, and the teachers are not trained to use the first language of the child to scaffold the learning of English. So moving on now to the achieved or the experienced EMI policy and what are the learner outcomes. There are 4 areas mainly where research has focused on. One is impact of EMI on developing English language skills. The second one is on content learning. To what extent does it facilitate or is a hindrance in learning the content? Very little work has been done on cognitive skill development and creativity. And once again, what's the role of EMI in that? And finally, so the first 3, 1, 2, and 3 deal with educational attainment in terms of grades and scores and stuff like that. But the fourth one is learner identity, is more to do with learners' confidence levels, their self-perception, and so on. And more the socio-emotional side of learning. In terms of educational attainment, proficiency English is variable, and it's linked to learners' home background and social status and school type. And that's why I had earlier shared with you the different school types and how the policies were enacted there. In terms of content learning, once again, we have the results are variable. It depends on how well EMI is used for delivering content and co-constructing knowledge in the classroom. But in terms of cognitive skill development, creativity, particularly in what is the middle income English medium schools, the non-elite schools, the government schools for the masses, the focus is entirely on reproducing material which is taught in the learner's second, third, or fourth language, and therefore there is not, particularly for English, the focus is totally on learning, rote learning, and passing the exams. So once again, then very little learning takes place in terms of learning of English, but also in terms of cognitive skill development and creativity. The learners lag behind from these schools, and therefore they lose out on several life chances in the future or any further educational opportunities in the future. In terms of socio-emotional outcomes, the silencing of learners' voices. And I remember that when I was a few years ago, one of my PhD students came to me one day and said, "You're a very bright young woman." And she said, "You have silenced my voice by using English as medium of instruction in the classroom." And it was, it was so sad to hear her say that. And unfortunately, she felt so much as if she didn't know anything. And she said that, "You're making me feel as if I don't know, simply because I don't know English and I'm unable to participate in the classroom discussions and so on." So silencing of learners' voices, and that has been found in studies now. and identity crisis, generating feelings of fear, feelings of shame, feelings of inadequacy. Who am I? Not sort of, not identifying with your own language, being ashamed of your own language, and of course, always feeling inadequate in terms of, if I don't know English, I don't know anything. And that is really sad, because then it impacts their, not just their future life chances, but their motivation level to move forward. So with, I'm sorry, I'm sort of, if I can fast forward now to EMI and link, how does it link with sustainable development goals and social justice? Because English as medium of instruction is not simply a medium of instruction. I feel that it is linked to, and we need to look at it holistically in terms of other sustainable development goals and in terms of social justice. And for example, if you look at linguistic rights, EMI, and not just EMI, but EMI, at least in the Pakistani situation, in the elite schools, has created a linguistic apartheid, which is, there are very clear distinctions between people who know English and what their life chances are, and people who don't know English and what their life chances are. In terms of social and educational equity, we have it's increasing social disparities in access to educational opportunities. And not just educational opportunities in general, but in access to quality education, because the elite schools where EMI is practiced have more resources to provide quality education than the other schools which are there for the masses. So there's basically social class differences are being created between English and what are in Pakistan called English medium and Urdu medium learners. And now these are used as labels to identify. So when you say somebody is English medium, it does not just show what medium of instruction they follow in a school or in an institution, but also their social class or show their social standing. And sometimes also they're considered more the smarter than the Urdu medium learners. So it's creating all those gaps. So one of the things in the Sustainable Development Goals is poverty alleviation. Now, instead of reducing inequalities, I think it's widening the gap between haves and have-nots, and therefore the chances of reducing poverty, because the majority of these people who are going to the general education, sometimes it's called general education, or the low income private schools, or where English is not the medium of instruction and there's no quality education given, they do not have any chances of moving forward. And therefore, if they start below the poverty line, that's where they're going to remain even after being educated in those kinds of institutions. Language education and social justice, the dreams and realities. As I said, Dreams and Realities is the title of a book that was edited by Professor Howell Coleman, my guru in all these things. So if we go back to look at, so let's look at a bit at the future. This is my dream. The intended policy should be that it should value indigenous languages and add them to the curriculum along with teaching of English, so that we do not devalue indigenous languages, and they do not. Now, many of these languages in all our multilingual contexts, I mean, I know Nepal, I know other countries where some research has been done about it, in Bangladesh, that there is, people, the focus on English and not teaching it well, and has actually led to people not knowing enough English and not knowing enough of their own languages. So what we call semi-literates. In enacted policy, I would like to see, ideally, improved teaching of English as a functional language. So whether EMI is used or not, everybody has a basic functional proficiency in using English. And then planned use of learners L1, not just spontaneous and unplanned translanguaging, but planned use so that of either the L1 or the most familiar language in order to scaffold their transition to EMI. If EMI has to be used, for example, from grade 6 for some subjects or from grade 3 for some subjects, then the teachers need to be actually aware of how to use a learner's L1 and not simply go of translating one to the other, or use it spontaneously when they see that learners don't understand. In terms of achieved policy, my dream is that all learners should have adequate proficiency in English and in their L1 or the most familiar language. Unfortunately, as I said, one of the dilemmas of or resultant impact of EMI is that the majority of learners, at least in Pakistan, have neither adequate proficiency in English and nor in their own language, which is a real dilemma. And also, I would like to see that indigenous languages are valued in society and learners so that the learners are proud to be associated with them. And they do not feel that there's a deficit, if they do not know English or and also in terms of their identity, they're proud of who they are and they can associate with their own language. However, the reality as I see it, I'm afraid, at least, and this is focusing on Pakistan, but I think, as I said earlier, it's probably true for several other similar contexts. We all know that English is here to stay as a lingua franca, at least for the next so many years, till another language takes over. But English will continue to act as a gatekeeper and divider, accentuating social disparities rather than providing access to quality education, which is Sustainable Development Goal 4, providing quality education and access to quality education to all, or reducing inequalities, which is once again another Sustainable Development Goal, because currently, as I said, these policies are not driven by a focus on improving the quality of education or providing everyone an equal chance to learn the language, English language, and become functional users of that language. So I'm sorry, I'm ending my talk on a very pessimistic note. And I hope that this is only for Pakistan and not true for the other countries that and the context that are represented here. I feel that the situation, even in the next 50 years, will not change till there's political will to address the issue of language education in tandem with the social stratification of schools in Pakistan. Till we have this fractured school system, which is based on social divisions and class divisions, no matter what policy we have, no matter how well it is implemented in the classroom, I do not think that any great changes will take place in terms of providing access to the masses, to everyone, to quality education, or reducing inequalities and therefore poverty alleviation. I will stop here, and I'm open to questions now.
Okay, thank you very much for this material. I think it is very interesting material for Professor Fauziah Zamin. There is one words that I want to share maybe about the, you can say, dreams and the realities. I think it is the same in Indonesia because English is a second language. Okay, now this is the session for the question and answer. Maybe in this floor, can your hands if want to ask about the material from the Prof. Zamin. Any other participant want to ask about this material? Please hand your hands. Prof. Zamin, maybe there are one participant, but he is sit inside me. He want to what is continuous, and then maybe you are interested for his coming here. It is Prof. Howell. It is from Leeds University, but it is a professor visiting professor in State University of Jakarta. Prof. It's time for you.
Thank you. Hello, Fauzia. This is Howell.
Hi, how are you doing, Howell?
I'm
Good to see you.
well. Thank you for a very interesting presentation, as always. You ended on a pessimistic note with a hope that the situation in other countries is not the same. In fact, it's very, very. We recently completed research on EM in higher education. Colleagues from 3 universities here and 2 colleagues from Leeds. We've just submitted a paper to the journal Current Issues in Policy. We found from questionnaires to 120 universities, in-depth case studies in 3 universities. The justifications for introducing EMI, we call them common sense justifications. These are what people were telling us was, well, it's obvious that, in fact, it's not all obvious. There are 4 main common sense justifications that people gave, some of which are similar to the ones you mentioned. One is that using EMI will increase the quality of education. Another one is that EMI is essential for international accreditation. In fact, the international accreditation bodies don't show any interest in the medium. Another one, very similar to what you mentioned, was needed for international competitiveness, as though education is aimed at preparing people to compete, not to operate. Or associated with that with a very strong sense. You see this language aim growing. I see people who seem to have an idea that English is really highly prestigious language. And at the same time, the national language, perhaps in Indonesia, is dropping in prestige. So it's as though as English increases in status, perhaps in Indonesia, it's falling. And then the 4th myth identified is that English can somehow be acquired by osmosis from the subject lecturers. So somehow their competence in English be transferred through invisible means. So those are the 4 common.
Yeah, I think, Howell, what you said, and I mean, I guess that the situation would be similar in other countries, and whatever literature review I've done of countries like, there's lots been written recently about Nepal by Prem Paik and by Pramod Sa. They've actually done and gone to the classrooms and looked at how the policy is implemented there. There's also some work being done at that level in Pakistan by Manan and Chana and all the others. So people have begun to see that there are some misperceptions, but I think still, I don't know how, but generally the beliefs seem to be so entrenched in our society, and particularly, as I said, in Pakistan. And as you said, the prestige of English is on the rise continuously. People want to learn English. They feel that the way to learn English is if English is used as a medium of instruction. But it's not just the people, it's also what I worry about is the higher ups, the policy makers. The policies are made. You see, recently, as I said, we had this curriculum where they called it a single national curriculum. and one nation, one curriculum. So it's more of a political agenda. And when English was introduced overnight in Pakistan in, I think, 2005 or something, once again, with the government notification, no implementation plans, no planning, no teacher training, not looking at the inadequate proficiency of English, of not just subject teachers, but English teachers. And I remember that when the Punjab experiment started, I was called in as a consultant to do a small thing like I think a survey questionnaire or something for the impact study. And I said, I know what the responses are going to be because we've been in the education system, and I'm surprised that the aid agencies, the donors could not see that, or they did not do a baseline study before they put in that huge amount of money over a period of 3 to 4 years to start EMI in schools which were not ready for it. And therefore, there's a lot being written about the failed Punjab experiment now. So I am not sure. The EMI is not, I don't think it's a problem by itself. The way it is perceived, the way it is conceptualized, the way it is used, at least in Pakistan, because when the government said, oh, we're going to make all schools English medium, the marketing or the propaganda that was done was so that everybody has equal access to life opportunities. Now, I mean, as educationists, we know that overnight government notifications do not translate into teaching, proper teaching or learning of those subjects in the classroom. So I really don't, I mean, I feel a bit disappointed. And as I said, that when I have this pessimism now, and I feel probably I'm going more of a skeptic now, because I don't see any changes happening, no matter what policy we make. And no matter how informed it is by research, first of all, current policies are not informed by research, but even if they were, because they basically, it is linked with this continuity of social class divisions and English being used as a tool to sort of, to not just to accentuate, but also to make sure to sustain them, to actually make sure that the pre-existing social inequalities actually remain, and English becomes another tool, or EMI becomes another tool for that. So I really don't know what we are going to do, but something really needs to be done together by our countries. And we are not just one, we are, as you said, there are many countries that are facing the same situation.
The only thing we can do is keep on talking about it in public.
At least.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Hawa. Any other questions for this participant in here? Okay, while waiting the questions, maybe Prof. Zabin, I want to ask you about this EMI, because it is what is we can I say that it is the same. We are about teaching English for the second language and the third language and the fourth language in this our knowledge. So I want to ask about how you are developing about the EMI for the learners, especially for the public state school and then private school and madrasah or religion schools in Pakistan. So I want to know that because in Indonesia there is a night school in here. I want to ask about what to use about EMI, use EMI in this what is for a public school and private school and madrasah schools in Pakistan. Thank you.
So that's a question for me, yeah, right?
Yeah, it's a question to you.
Okay, yeah. What I would like to say is Howell, with the British Council, did a study in Howell, that was 2010, where I think, I mean, the report was published in 2010, where Howell looked very closely at and talked to several people and the stakeholders and traveled across Pakistan talking to people and recommended some policy guidelines for Pakistan, which were to do with starting in the mother tongue and having a mother tongue based education system. But as I said, these recommendations, though we all agree with them, though I think in research, there's a lot of research to back them up, but I'm not sure whether the government actually even considered them. And because for them to consider this, they once again have to have the political will to be thinking about providing equal access. So not just sort of equality, but equity. Not just saying, oh, so from tomorrow everybody will have EMI in the schools, but equity. Are they actually able to gain anything from that policy change? So yeah, I mean, the studies have been done, research has been done, but I think it all depends on the political will, which I do not see, because the social class divisions our society is so steeped in these social class divisions, and English serves the elite as the language of power. So I really, I mean, I don't think I've answered your question, but what I'm saying is that the situation is so complex that probably it's very difficult to answer a question of that kind, like, in a few words.
Okay, thank you. But there is one question from the Rosalind Tanayo. Please, Rosalind.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. I would like to ask you about a short explanation before EMI affects students' language skills. Is there any terms and conditions for school that want to apply EMI in their curriculum? Because I've read that in Indonesia there are several schools that apply EMI. For example, in Bali. Thank you.
When you say terms and conditions, are you talking about the formal terms and conditions, or are you talking about the kinds of things that might facilitate the learning of English and the enacting of the EMI policy in the classroom, using EMI in the classroom? Rosalind, do you want to clarify that?
I mean, what should the school do to apply this EMI in their curriculum? Maybe facilitation or something like that, ma'am?
Okay, you see, there are several things that can be done, but then they require a lot of commitment and resources. One is that you have to ensure that the teachers have adequate proficiency in the language to teach the content through English. So they must have, of course, they have the content knowledge, but they must be able to use English to deliver that content, and not just deliver that and get people to learn things by heart, but actually co-construct knowledge, so to allow people to be creative and develop their cognitive skills in the classroom. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the teachers need to be trained in what is now called CLIL, or content language integrated learning. So they should actually do planned interventions and use of L1 in the classroom. Those are two essentials. The third one is, which we cannot control, is that the home background of the students. Because in Pakistan, the elite schools, the students have a home background that's very facilitative for learning English. So the English is not just in the classroom, the English is all over in their lives and outside. And sometimes I worry about people from elite English medium schools that they seem to be conversing in English with their siblings, with their friends. It's almost becoming a home language for them. So even if we can't naturally control the home background of the learners, we can still do something for the classroom environment to be conducive to learning of English and using EMI.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Rosalind. I think this enough for Fauzia, because for the next panel session. Thank you very much for your knowledge, and thank you very much for your sharing your knowledge in here, and to say goodbye, and then nice to see you in this time. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much, Professor Helena, and thank you. Alaikum assalam.
Game terus. Dan terus. Daster terus.
Mas, bobanya satu ya.
Boba terus. Terus. Terus, 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 terus. Terus, 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 terus. Kalau terus-terusan boros, kapan nabungnya? Yuk mulai nabung, nabung. Tabungan Mas di Pegadaian Digital aja. Ada promo mulai nabung hingga akhir tahun. Top up-nya bisa pakai kode promo gajian Mas yang ada di setiap bulannya. Kamu bisa dapat diskon hingga Rp250.000. Download aplikasi Pegadaian Digital dan mulai nabung dari sekarang. Yuk mulai nabung Mas sekarang untuk masa depan yang cemerlang. Nabung terus ya.
cepat, hidup lebih hebat. Dimanapun kita berada, kita semua sama, berlari penuh semangat. Chase a dream in every day we live in.
Thank you for the presentations.
Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome to the final keynote speaker of the conference, Professor Dr. Hafid Abbas from Universitas Negeri Jakarta, Indonesia. The moderator for this session is Professor Hywel Coleman. Professor Coleman, we hand over the audience to you.
Still mute, Professor Coleman.
Can we summarize?
Yes, yes.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon.
Waalaikumsalam.
Good afternoon, everybody. The last of the 7 great privilege for me to be able to share this with Hafid Abbas, who is extremely well-known speaker with extraordinary range of experiences. He's studied in the United States and parts of the world, and in fact is a graduate from UNJ. You should think probably the most eminent alumnus. He's worked in government positions more than 10 years, and he's worked as a consultant in the field of human rights with UNESCO and the other. He's been consulting in situations where countries are transitioning from authoritarian regimes, from highly centralized. So from this extraordinarily rich background, he would like to talk to us today about social. He's going to take 3 examples from Indonesian university to talk. So, Professor, we're looking forward to your talk. Please go ahead.
Thank you.
Can I just say that I think the session is 45 minutes. If you could talk for 30 minutes, so that we have plenty of time for discussion. I'll give you a sign just before your time is up, so we have plenty of time to talk. And then if people would like to make comments during the presentation, ask questions, can you put them in the chat box that I can, you don't have to wait till the end, at any point during the presentation, write your questions, then at the end we can use those as a start. Okay, I can back.
Thank you so much, Professor Coleman. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed both honor and privilege for me to participate at this international conference. So allow me to share with you the issue that I would like to share to you all, that how to promote university potential or university capacity to promote social entrepreneurship. And I would like to share some lesson learned, a few cases, as Professor Coleman has mentioned so far, that I would like to bring up these 3 examples that how to promote university potential for social entrepreneurship. There are 6 or 5 points that I would like to share to you all. One is the first, the background of why social entrepreneurship is important and what is the role indeed of university. Second is, I would like also to expose the existing realities faced by Indonesia. This is traumatic challenges and how to deal with these challenges into a new hope, how to reduce the social gap that exists across the nations. The third is the university potential. We have some 4,593 higher education or universities across Indonesia, but this has not been maximized their role. So totally, the number of universities or higher education in this institution in Indonesia is around 70%, 17% of the total globe universities and higher education. We are twice much higher than the entire universities or higher education institution across European Union continent. So it's a large number of universities that we have to push their potential for the benefit of science, technology, and humanities. And the fourth is I would like to share with you the Center of Excellence for developing some lesson learned, that how Polynema in Malang could be one of a good example, and how to deal with small scale industries. Always in Polindo in North Sulawesi on agriculture, and what is the role of Tanriabeng University to develop people enterprise. We call it Badan Usaha Milik Rakyat. And the last, the fifth, is the summary. So let me share to you these 5 points to you all by putting this slides, and hopefully you can we can discuss it later. Yes. This is the background. According to the UNESCO World Declaration of Higher Education that adopted in 1998, that university indeed is to advance, create, and disseminate knowledge through research and provide as a part of its services to the community. Means that to assist societies in all dimensions, culture, social, and economic development, and to promote scientific and technological research, as well as in social sciences, the humanities, and the creative art. Means that the creation of prosperity, justices, and science and technology. That's the mandate of the university. So this is a great potential that we have with 4,593 universities. This is also the mandate of the university to develop this, their contribution to society through social entrepreneurship. This is non-profit orientation, to contribute and empower the powerless, to solve local unemployment, to reduce poverty, and to develop communities. This exploratory reflection on this picture, we have three pronged strategies. One is a made observation in Polytechnic Negeri Malang in East Java, and also visiting Manado, North Sulawesi, the border between the Philippines and Indonesia. It's a very beautiful island there. And also, I made a visit to Tandri Apeng University in Jakarta to get insight that how to develop Tridharma activities related to social entrepreneurship, because this is something new in academic environment across all universities. Second is I made also dialogue and interview with any related institution, policymakers at the university, each university, to find link and match model. Remember during Wardiman time as our Minister of Education, the minister developed link and match policy and how to partner with local industries, local businesses. And also observing some secondary data, some report made by universities, made by DICTI, made by local authorities. We call it PEMDA or mayor or governor. So now let me move to the second one, the existing realities. Here in Indonesia, and Prof. Hywel knows very well because he has been here for quite sometimes. He's traveled a lot across Indonesia. If we took a flight from Banda Aceh to Merauke, it takes some 9 hours. So similar to the distance that I took a flight from Jakarta to Johannesburg to South Africa. It's far, far away. And we have 3 time zone. So now it's 2 o'clock in Jakarta, but in Papua is already 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So it is nice to break our fasting in Papua because much faster to break the fasting. So with this size of Indonesia, the time zones, 3 time zones with 17,504 islands, with almost 300 million people, this is indeed a maritime continent, because here the size is that we have some 8.2 million square kilometers of the sea and the land. So the size of Indonesia is twice much larger than the entire European Union. And we have still some 6,000 islands are not yet occupied. And 2,000 of the 6,000 islands, the size is a little bit much bigger than Singapore, because Singapore size is smaller than Pulau Samosir. We have an island in the center of lake small lake in not Sumatra, but the island is a little bit bigger than Singapore. So let's maximize the university capacity, potential to develop Indonesia. This is, well, a very impressive report made by World Bank that Indonesia now is decaying from the within. Indonesia lapuk dari dalam. Indonesia is rising in divide. World Bank is predicting that we will likely to be disintegrated in the near future if we cannot address a few cases within the report. We are the fourth largest, most unequal nation in the world after Russia, India, Thailand, and Indonesia. Indonesia is the fourth largest. Probably will move to the third or the second largest of unequal nation. It's a very traumatizing picture in these big, very big nations. Look, we have here a number, some 56 million small-scale enterprises. But now the latest data is more than 60 million, like penjual bakso, penjual gorengan, are not bankable. Mean that the country did not touch them. The country for the banking only facilitated some 4,000 big businesses. So this is in danger because the powerless is a huge number. Can you imagine that 70% of businesses across Indonesia, this is data from Ministry of State Enterprise, are not bankable. Means that no attention from the nation, no financial support to them. Yeah. And we have 4 islands that we share this to other nations, especially China. We say, come on, you can exploit, you can use this 4,000 islands for your benefit. So you can change even the name of the island. So that's formally endorsed by Pak Luhut in one day. And here, this is a massive social gap. 35 million hectares of land is not for the public. This is only for a few private companies. And it is another 14 million square kilometers, square hectares. So 50 million altogether. There is no benefit for the common poor or the Indonesian people because they are under the control of a few business elites here. And here I have noted when I was the president of Komnas HAM, or National Commission of Human Rights, this is the data that no single centimeters of Indonesian land belong to Indonesian people, like the East Kalimantan, North Kalimantan, South East Sulawesi, and many others, because central authorities and local authorities gave all these resources to foreigners investment, Singapore Chinese, Malaysian Chinese, and Chinese from Hong Kong, and with this collaboration with local Chinese of Indonesian citizens. Means that the benefit for the entire nation is only for the very, very selected few. We can't count it. And look here, this is also in danger because look, 11 trillion thousand rupiah. So means 6 years of our national budget. They are now take it away from Indonesia. They don't spend all this budget. They don't keep it in our national bank. They run away. They take it outside of Indonesia. That's the habit of our business person. When I was Vice Minister, Deputy Minister at Ministry of Justice, I was trying to catch up those, you see, business person who robbed the Indonesian money. For instance, Hendra Raharja, they escaped to Australia. But we cannot bring back those money because we have a constraint for legal issue in Australia. So until Hendra Raharja passed away, the money, the resources remain there. And Sri Mulyani said 80% of Indonesian assets that are taken by those Chinese business person, they slice, they put that, they keep it in Singapore, not they put it in Indonesia, because they just only take the resources. This habit is much more traumatized than the habit of Dutch colonization, because Dutch is not so much exploited the nation. They share the land. In Jakarta, they only take maintain. But if there is from Sumatra, they share with Kampung Melayu. If they from Maluku, they Dutch colonial government gave to Kampung Ambon. If they're from Sulawesi, they gave Makassar. So means Dutch colonial is more humane than the existing conspiracy of the elite and business person. So that's the reason why there is no reduction of poverty number, even increasing during the period of President Joko Widodo. Yeah, so we have spent 10,000 trillion rupiahs, but not any single benefit for the common people of Indonesia. Only for Indonesia, not for companies, for persons. But the wealth, the resources is almost equal to the half of wealth of all Indonesian. And maybe next year will increase only 3 Chinese business person dominate more than half of all Indonesian wealth. This is in danger. That's predicted by World Bank. So now let me move to the third. So that's the realities. No one can deny that. But many scientists, many academics are not sincere to touch the core issue of the nations. But I think that's risky. If you keep your wound secretly, so you will pass away in peace. You will not survive. So why don't we share this to all academic community that look, Indonesia is now almost collapsed because we are creating a dependency with business person, and the business person you see are not sincere to share their benefit for the common people or for the Indonesian. Now let's explore the university potential. The world now is changing, it's going to university. Well, it's a very prospective that university to need to voice their voice, not to remain silent and remain voiceless. This is the time for the scientists, the university to wake up. So we need to develop a center of excellence at each of all the 4,500 universities. We can adopt laureate international universities modality. We have also CIMIO in ASEAN. I wrote a few articles, or maybe 100 articles about the future of university, that how university can contribute to the world. This is in ASEAN community. We are moving to a single community of nations. And this is also article available APEC connectivity. I shared this in 2013, so almost a decade ago. So this is the number of universities. We have academe, we have sekolah tinggi, we have public, private, and they're all, you see, distributed to all the island across Indonesia. We have 6 economic corridor. There is a corridor for agro industry, corridor for energy di Kalimantan, Sulawesi is fisheries, and Maluku is also Papua is also the gateway for the mining, energy, and food security. Bali is the gateway of national tourism, and you see, so this a kind of developing center of excellence in accordance with local economic corridor. So IPB, I think, is a new orientation. They open marine studies while there is no ocean across or near IPB campus. this university base is on agriculture, but just a few weeks back, the IPB, Institute Pertanian Bogor, open medical school. I think there's so much wide orientation, so no you see spirit for developing their excellence, center of excellence. But MPPI3I, Master Plan for Economic Development of Indonesia for next decade or next 5 years, that we would like to develop, you see, economic and inclusive economic growth, expanding development to poorer region. Otherwise, we will not survive. We're not able to survive. And the strategic focus is that accelerating 6 economic corridor here, and also strengthening human resources, and developing science and technology, and sustain accelerating green economic growth. So this is the picture. The next one is, what is the Center of Excellence as a lesson learned? And maybe Professor Coleman, you're familiar with the condition in European Union. For instance, Germany can produce aircraft, but Germany does not produce bicycle because Holland has to do that. Germany can plant tulips, but should not do that because Dutch has already produced tulips, some 6-7 million tangkai piece per day. So this is a kind of center of excellence. France can do whatever they want to do, but they're not producing, you see, a watch or clock, because Switzerland has to do that. This is a kind of building interdependency for the greater achievement of European Union universities. My son studied in Tilburg University because they're strong for international business. My other son studied on Queensland because they're strong on IT. So this is a kind of, you see, the orientation of university to develop center of excellence. And here, let's see. Polynemad is a good example. A small polytechnic or applied technology university, but they produce 100 billion benefit or profit a year because the very clear orientation. They serve one nation, the Timor-Leste, to empower the teacher of vocational in secondary school. They produce a number of products for home industries, 100 types. So this could be, you see, a kind of contribution of this small public polytechnics for the benefit of Indonesia. And the impact is, well, no employment for the alumni. They created jobs, the more in development, innovation, that's the tax revenue increase, a wider partnership with industries and communities. So this really an example to be replicated by another 4,593 universities and higher education. So look, this example to empower the powerless. The second example is Manado here. They maximizing the benefit of coconut there, the utilization of coconut product. I noted that BPS statistic data that the total area there across 260,000 or 68,000 hectares of land, but not productive one is 267,000 hectares. But some 3.5 million coconut trees are not productive. So the trees could be utilized, but they are not using the resources. Even the coconut coir shell could be, maximize their benefit for other industry, home industry. Yeah. So the orientation has to be engaged with local economic corridor. This is the model that there is a problem there. You see, abundance of resources of coconut, but underutilized. So if the university like Polimdo, yeah, local polytechnics, identify a few products of those resources, then they can prototype, demonstrate the product. They can book tables, chairs, houses, and then develop in partnership with industry, then become project work. So created industrial product practice based on the local problem, and then the product could be, you see, collaborated with the industry. This is an example. I bought a few. You see, this is a waste of coconut tree for a few millions coconut trees. The very small, very simple industry is a kind of home industry. But one table with 4 chairs cost 22 million. Yeah. So this is house, this knockdown houses. No ant or termite can touch this because like iron, very strong wood. Yeah. But I advise the Polido not to use iron. They can use the fiber of the coconut cover. Yeah. And this is now more sophisticated. This is the fiber, coconut fiber product, and they can use it for taggle or the wall. Can make it a tile, can make it a string, and 100 types of products. We can also use like this one. It's similar, the quality of marble because of the product. It's a very simple technology. This is a coconut shell product. I joined with local people over there. Sorry, not so appropriate to take this picture, yeah, but to my sympathy with the local communities there, I also help this woman to process the coconut shell. And this the product. They export it to many different countries with the benefit of billion rupiahs per year. So the impact is reducing poverty, empowering the poor, job creation, innovation, and so on and so on. So if the 4,900, 593 universities can be replicated in this way,
sorry
then
to
we can
interrupt.
remove poverty. Not
Sorry
necessarily
to
only
interrupt.
3% or 4% of Indonesia dominated the entire nation, because there's a conspiracy with local business person, with local bureaucracy. Yeah.
Is it possible
This
for
is
you
the benefit.
to finish in
Polydoc can be a model, can
5
be
minutes,
a training
please?
center, can be advisory team to local communities and resource sharing, and also make innovation. This is the last. This is Tan Sri Abeng University. Tan Sri Abeng is the former Minister of State Enterprise during Suharto time and during Habibie time. As a former Minister of State Enterprise and now is still advisor to President Joko Widodo, he's also worrying that if the mass poverty remains in escalation, so Indonesia will not be able to survive. They must be collapsed. They must be disintegrated if the conspiracy between the elite, political elite, with the Chinese business person, because no spirit of togetherness to stay in a one home of Indonesia. They feel themselves much more loyal to their country of origin than China. You see, that's danger. So that's why university has to address this issue. According to Tantri, there are 18 clusters of the poorest of the poor. Fishermen, farmers, indigenous communities, how to help them to be self-help. So that's the role of university. So inclusive economic development must be immediately made. So the university has to be established there with a strong commitment according to the mandate of UNESCO, mandate of World Declaration of Higher Education, to empower that institutional level, individual level, institutional level, societal level, in order that all Indonesians can enjoy greater justice. Because if no justice, that's a kind of a wound that we keep it forever, then will never cure, because the injustice is the enemy for human family. And this great injustice across Indonesia, because the conspiracy between business person and elite, the elite power, is the more romantic than any part of the globe, I think. So Country Abeng put that with this empowering those powerless to listen their voiceless expression made by university. So the benefit is tremendously important for Indonesia. So let me make a summary. This is a very last, is that identify economic corridor, the 4,593 universities of higher education can share the dream to empower the local economic corridor, set up center of excellence system, manage their institution, manage the university as small-scale industry, small-scale businesses with the support of ICT, information communication technology, and create training center to train, to capacitate those who are not able to survive. And university can be mobile to win the mind and the heart of those people almost you see disappear. Yes, because they are very you see weak. To empower them is for the survive of all. So innovation and publication has to be made. So I hope Professor Howell, Indonesia could smile like the future of these three children. But I'm worrying that in the future, if the university remains silent, that we cannot see these children smile again in the future. They will crying like the page of World Bank publication, Indonesia Rising Divide. You can see here the two Indonesian. One is enjoying the beauty of Indonesia because they have all the resources from Indonesia. But this one, look, you see the is so sad because they see Indonesia with great injustices, the most injustice fought in the world. So thank you for this short reflection, and I hope this could be well explore further and we discuss it more thoroughly. Thank you, Professor Howell. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you very much for very, very powerful presentation, very moving presentation. I can't see any questions in the chat box yet. And your presentation brought many things to my mind. Firstly, the discrimination begins at the beginning of primary school or even earlier than primary. And maybe we need to think about the implications not only for universities, but for the whole education system. And this has a parallel with the preceding presentation, Dan, where the speaker was talking about injustice of having an elite education system, the poorest parts of the population. And the state, it's the state which is contributing to education. The second thing that came to my mind was, how optimistic are you that mainstream universities in Indonesia can move in the direction hoping for? Would you like to comment
May
on
I
that?
answer it? Hello?
Yes. Would you like to comment on my second question? How optimistic are you that mainstream state universities in Indonesia can go in the
Yeah,
direction you hope for?
I'm very optimistic, Professor Rawal. If the new management system to be reformed, not to exploit students for the benefit of the management or the benefit of official of the university. Because I noted the World Bank publication most recently that the 20% of Indonesian national budget for education, so some 650 trillion rupiahs, is huge amount because our annual budget is 2,600 trillion rupiahs annually. So 20% of them is indeed extremely large amount. Yeah. But no single benefit for the children or students because World Bank reported that 96% of this total budget is the benefit for their officials. For instance, I have here in Sragen, for instance. But the average is 86% of all total budget, not for the children, not for the student, is the benefit for the elite, the welfare for teachers, for principal, for all officials. So the remaining is for infrastructure. So Indonesian budget, 20% is not any benefit, if I may say so, for the children. So this is according to one of Nobel laureate on literature from Chile. If I may quote it, her name is Gabriela Mistral. She said, this Nobel laureate on literature, the worst crime, if today we are guilty of so many errors and so many faults, but the worst crime we have is abandoning the children, meaning that the children is neglected. So mean that we lost the future. So this is according to Gabriela, this is the worst crime. So Indonesian education system managed with the worst crime system. While Vietnam, they take it for welfare is only 43%. But for Indonesia, it's about 90%. For US, it's only for 53%. For Finland, it's also 55%. Indonesia is the largest number not to share the single benefit for the children, but they take it as the source of their prosperity. So I hope this could be a good momentum of this international seminar to expose that how Indonesia can, what we call to be insaf, ya, bisa masuk surga kita semua, ya, jangan merampok keselamatan hari depan anak-anak cucu kita. Ya. So that's my, if this to be reformed, then there is a hope there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Still can't see any the chat box. Would anybody like to? Yes, Ibu saya.
Thank you very much for opportunities given to me, Haiwa. Thank you very
Yes,
much for
yes.
the very informative presentation, Prof. Hafid Abbas. As we know, understanding the human right is needed for proper society. I would like to know about your opinion. I would like to know about your opinion about the relationship between human rights and education. And what do you think? How to make the teachers to be competent to teach effectively related to human rights? Thank you very much.
Yes, maybe Professor Awel, you're the right person to respond to Professor Elisa. Yeah, because you have been here then for many decades. But anyhow, yeah, may I respond it, Professor Awel?
I think it's better if you answer.
Yes, yeah. Actually, the university mandate, according to UNESCO, that university is a scientific community, Professor Arita, whose members being fully committed to the pursuit of truth, not to hide the truth, but the community of the university, like UNJ, not to hide the truth, but to expose the truth for science, for technology development. For what? For the prosperity of the family. For what? For justice. For what? For democracy, promoting dignity, yeah, and to create world peace. So this is really a human right mandate. That the role of university. University is not political institution. That a human right institution indeed, because to prepare the future of the student there. But to integrate the spirit, the value of human right is the responsibility of all subjects. If you teach, for instance, law, teach students not to use their competence on law, to manipulate law, and to allow those corruptors to be angels. We have to be very consistent to tell the truth and just. If you are teaching biology, for instance, or cancer, not to use the danger of cancer to kill human families, but to remove cancer to any you see who suffer from cancer. To teach the theory of economy, not to bring benefit, to give 4,000 islands to Chinese elite, to Chinese business communities, or to Chinese Singapore, or to whoever, as we do at the moment with 4,000 islands we get them. But to give the authority for the poor to stand up in their own land to take the benefit of their own land, because they are the fighter. They have been colonized for 350 years. Why don't you recognize their suffering by, you see, not to remove them away from their local origin? So this is my call as a responsibility to all. Yeah, that's my preach, Professor Amon.
Point you said?
Yeah, that's my point. That
Right.
human university school is a human right institution because the role of education is a bridge as the best equalizer to uplift the weak to enjoy justice, dignity, and equality, Professor Homan. Yeah.
Many universities, maybe all universities, are busy competing with each other. As the objective be the best in the world, best in the focus on local people, but on international reputation. The committee is giving me signs to say that our time is up, unfortunately. I think we could continue with this for a long time. Very much indeed, Professor.
May I short remark, Professor Homan? Yes, yesterday I have about 3 hours talks with Datuk Seri Dr. Nuraini Ahmad. She is Minister of Higher Education of Malaysia. she's the same village with me, coming from South Sulawesi, and we have dinner and we chat together that why in the past that Indonesia is the destination for Malaysian to enjoy good quality of education. But now Indonesia put Malaysia as destination for having good education. So that's a lot of dream to be exchange between the two nations. And hopefully Indonesia will not far behind from our neighboring countries. And we hope that UNJ can be a model for the future. So that's my hope, hopefully so. Thank
Very
you.
much indeed.
Thank you all.
Thank you for the session, Professor Coleman and Professor Dr. Hafid Abbas.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next agenda is to take photo together. So for all attendees, please turn your camera on. To the operator and teams, are you ready? Okay. On my comments, 3, 2, 1. Next. 3, 2, 1. Okay, again. 3, 2, 1. Okay, for the last time, maybe. Give your best smile. 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you very much. Ladies and
So may
gentlemen.
I leave? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, our last keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Hafiz Abbas, has closed the second International Conference on Humanities, Education, and Social Sciences. After these keynote sessions, we would like to invite you all to parallel sessions, and we have two parallel sessions, that 3 and 4.
On behalf of the committees, I would like to say that we're glad to have you in this event. And we would like to tell you that the conference, supported by PT Pegadaian Persero, PT Jaya Konstruksi Manggala Pratama, PT Bank Mandiri Persero Tbk, and I, Victorio Kusumosidi, and my partner,
Rizky Amalia, from Duta Universitas Negeri Jakarta,
would like to say goodbye to resign. Thank you so much for your participation in this event. Good evening. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
See you on the next International Conference on Humanities, Education, and Social Sciences in 2023.